welcome back to another episode of the TFTuesday Pod. My name is Zil, and I'm joined by my illustrious co-host K-Libra. How are you doing today?
I'm here, reaching far across these new frontiers. Yeah.
We got Sonic on the mind today.
It's on the mind a lot of days. That soundtrack has changed video games. Yeah, I dare say it. And it's just so good.
It's a spicy take, but I think it lands your honor.
Oh my god, it landed in everything. It's like, what if you took this music but put it here? Wouldn't it be, like, awesome? Let's put it at the climax of Dragon Ball Super. Let's do that. Let's take the music, put it in that. You know, like, oh man, did you notice this music is making so many things better?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of video games that I've played that have that impact, and I would say that Sonic Frontiers has a similar role. So
I feel like
does too.
Returnal is like a uniquely good entity.
Yes, it is.
It was a transformative experience.
It's very transformative.
Yeah,
y'all should get it, but it's on Steam. You fuckers don't have an excuse now. It's not PS exclusive. Go buy it. Go buy it now.
You can make it play like a potato if you need to.
This is also true.
But yeah.
Yeah. So this week we have just the two of us, and I'm excited to talk about the topic we have, which was actually suggested by a friend of the pod. We're going to be talking about TF within the context of IRL sexual situations. Fuck now.
Yeah. Okay, look. Okay. The problem with transformation that many people lament is that it's not real, and that doesn't have to be a problem. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't. You know, if you got a partner and you got somebody that's willing to, you know, just do a few things, you can have a lot of fun with it. Every single time you walk around with them or you do a little thing, you can always like do a wink, wink, nudge, nudge of all kinds of little things that can, you know, make it that much more real. You know, so it doesn't have to be like a literal thing. You can really use your imagination. Mm-hmm. You barely need a prop to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you can do a lot without props. But I think, you know, the reason why I was really interested in talking about this as well is, I mean, both you and I have had experiences with that. And so I think we have our own unique perspectives on how that can go and, you know, do's, don'ts, things you should talk about in advance, all that good stuff. But also, I think it's just it's an interesting topic that I think a lot of people just have a lot of shame around. And it's good to hear other people talk about it in a way that it's clear there is no shame in this conversation, because there shouldn't be. And like, just like with any other kink, if it's something that you want to explore, yes, obviously you need to have a conversation about it with whoever it is that you're engaging with it in, but there's nothing inherently shameful about it. And having more conversations is an avenue, hopefully, to have other people try to shed some of that shame and embrace it. So
yeah, I've heard it a bunch that there are people who's like, oh, you know, I feel alone. I want to have a relationship, but, you know, they'd never accept this thing about me. Or, you know, which I would argue is more troublesome. They say like, well, you know, I'd like a partner, but they must be into it. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, that's going to be tough. But I think that people need to be open to the fact that the best relationship that you may nurture may likely come from without this space. Kind of really pulling to have somebody from this pool of people is something that I think could, I don't know, just kind of hurt your experience with living. I think I think it's a huge mistake to just be like, oh, you know, only in the furry pool because only the furries will want, you know, understand me. Oh, only in the TF pool because only those people will possibly understand me. It's I fucking swear. Somebody subtweeted about me saying like I'm the reason that they got into it. And it's funny because it was phrased like, huh?
How is that a subtweet? That sounds like a compliment.
No. Because I say, unless it's derogatory, but the point is that like I was mentioned with, you know, but not named. Somebody I met, you know, after I rudely interrogated them about their art and all this stuff, I decided I'd try it myself, but now here I am.
Oh, I see.
And trust me, I went through the whole gamut of just like, isn't that weird? Or what about this? Or what about that? Or what about the animal thing? You know, is it like animal fucking? And I'm like, you know, here are all the things that I
Yeah.
like, and here's how it works in my head, and here's how it could work, and you could do like all this shit. And it's like, oh, that's cool. You know, like I don't think it's like hot or anything, but I want to try it. But you know, you try it with a little bit of everything you do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, also, I think like one of the problems I think that people are concerned about, like you said, is like you have to kind of go when you're not looking like specifically for someone who's already into TF, you have to like go into kind of like talking with someone, and when those topics come out, you almost immediately have to be vulnerable with someone who you don't know that well, if that's kind of the approach you're taking, and that can be really daunting for people because it's like it's already hard enough to be vulnerable in this economy, but to be vulnerable to someone who you might not even know that well, if that topic comes up and that's something you want to engage with right from the get-go, can be tricky. Now, obviously, not everyone approaches things that way. Sometimes it's like, I'm actually going to get to know this person and build a relationship with them first, and then maybe introduce them to this kink, which is probably a better idea. But, you know, I mean,
I'm surprised you even led with the whole like talking to somebody who you don't know, because I don't typically tell people about this if I don't already know them well enough. What made you think that?
okay. Okay. I guess I'm not thinking like from your perspective. I'm thinking from like average person perspective. Because like I'll be honest. To give you an example, like if someone's at a furry convention, obviously the odds are going to be much higher that someone at a furry convention is going to be into this kind of thing. But let's also be real here. Like there's plenty of people who go to furry conventions specifically just to fuck someone. And like, I mean, like someone, it's like, oh, I'm going to meet up with people and like hook up or whatever. And that is obviously a pool where it's more likely you're going to find people who are into TF, but it's not necessarily a guarantee. And so if someone's going into that situation and they've met someone that they kind of vibe with and they want to like progress things into the bedroom, but that's something that's important to them, then they do kind of have to broach that topic with someone they don't know very well, and therefore they have to be vulnerable to someone that they don't know well, and that is very, very daunting for people.
Okay, I can see that. I think it's kind of a paradox when you're already intending to go out and fuck strangers, but then be shy about it. I find that like an interesting paradox. No,
I mean,
really,
it
really,
is, but
really.
no,
Because
you're right, but it exists. I don't know what to say. It's a paradox, but it
I
exists.
mean, I'm gonna say that for the people that do that, get a little perspective about what you're doing, because that's a huge deal for a lot of people. Like, I kind of fancy the idea of some casual sex, but I never had any, you
Mm,
know. And so I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I'd be kind of a little nervous, but the way it's been framed to me also is if you're going to spend time with a stranger, right, in like a very populated setting, you know,
mm,
then what you have to remember is the advantage of a stranger. And if anything goes wrong with this person, you will never see them again. The odds are you
yes.
will never see them again. They will not impact your life. You know, the memories will live on in the two of you and whoever you talk to, and that shit will not really matter. And that's the advantage of like, you know, it's like when people go to bars and they talk to somebody like just there, and it's like, oh, I got sagacious advice from this guy, you know, and that's the
Yeah.
one time I saw him, you know. It's the same way, you know, if you're going to be doing hookups and everything like that, and it's a good way to take risks because, frankly, the things that the other people like are going to seep through, or maybe they're going to be like hoping for it too. It's a
Yeah.
very even playing field when you think about it. And just to wrangle it back to the topic at hand, you want to be changed into stuff or change people into stuff. Now, that is going to vary with like how it could be received because
Mm,
if you have something very straightforward, it's just like, oh yeah, turn into a monster sort of thing, and be like, growl for me, you know, growl for me, roar for me, things like that. You can do that. And, you know, it doesn't seem like much, but I bet you when you're in the middle of that and you'd be like, yeah, growl more for me, go, you know, be my monster. Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty hot in my opinion.
it is. It's definitely really hot. And that's just like the start of it. And it's a very small ask of somebody
Mm,
if you want to be like, hey, would you do this for me? You know? sometimes you don't even have to explain it. You could be like, I just want, like, I want to be with a big, scary monster, It's just like, oh, yeah. I mean, already people do, like, the, oh, rawr. That's not
Yeah,
beyond,
that's true.
that's not beyond, like, like, normies, if we're going to go that route,
Yeah.
Nobody's normal.
I mean, yes, this is also correct. No one is normal. People
Yeah.
will say they are, and I'm like, no, that's when I start doubting you. The more you protest to be normal, the more skeptical I am.
Yeah, and okay, so I gotta know, like, what are like the first steps you take to like break somebody into that?
So, I've had two sets of experiences. There's been the ones where the person already is like into TF, and then the ones where they're not, and so I have to broach it. So maybe I'll start with like that one because that might be more relevant, and then I can talk about because the process is different. When you already know the other person is into TF, it's like, okay, I can like skip this whole fucking like list of steps that I would go through. I could just fucking chuck it out the window because I don't have to explain all this shit. But so when I've had to like explain it to someone who doesn't know what TF is, I've been like, okay, so this is the we'll talk about like, oh, these are the kind of things I'm into at like a, more like, I don't want to say superficial, but like from like a, oh, like I'm into like you talk about comics or something or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, I'm a furry. That would be how I would start. Usually this is something within the realm of other furries, so yeah, it's like not hard, but I'm even talking like people outside of furry fandom. Start with that. That's usually where I start. You'll get a pretty good gauge as to how open someone is if you start with that, because if their immediate response is like to like recoil or like be like, oh, that's weird or whatever, I don't even need to like think anymore about like trying to get more like open about my stuff, because it's like, okay, you don't want to hear about this, then I think we're good. I don't think anything's going to happen here. If they indicate openness, or even better, ask you questions about it, that shows an interest. That's like, okay, there's at least some interest in getting to understand this part of me and understand where I'm coming from and my interests. So I can walk them through that, and then we can start gradually moving towards that end of TF. Because I'll tell you, it works every fucking time. When I start talking about furries, I'll be like, oh yeah, and like things like werewolves. Werewolves is like the easiest entry point I found. Like, you start with that, and then people are like, okay, yeah, furry, werewolf, see the connection, very important.
It's like I said, like I even said it in the podcast server, which you could join, if you're really interested, check out the Patreon. But yeah, somebody brought it up, like, oh, is there like really like a normie kind of like TF thing? Is there like TF normies? And I'm just like, werewolf people, because society like immediately understands it. They have some kind of impression that you can work with. So it's definitely a great wedge, like you said, to just bring up. It's like, oh, this plus that equals a lot of fun for me. Like, I understand this,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I remember when Triangle mentioned that, and yeah, it's such an easy segue into talking about transformation, because if you've started with the furry and then you've mentioned the werewolf and they're still on board, it's like, okay, great. We now have an on-ramp, because I can be like, and the thing that really interests me about werewolves is the process of becoming one, becoming a monster, or what have you. And I will also say, and this goes to credit to, I think, to even spaces outside of TF, like people, for the most part, understand what a monster fucker is now, which is great. Like, love that for everyone involved, both the people who are into that, myself included, but also like the people who can then use that as part of the like explanation for TF. Because on the one hand, depending on your interest, it could be like, I would like you to become a monster, or alternatively, it's I would like to become the monster,
or let's both become monsters.
Yes, exactly. Or like permutations of that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of like mixing and matching with that.
Yeah.
And you can definitely get people on board that way.
Yeah, exactly. So that's usually like the steps I will go through for like a normie or a furry who's like doesn't really know a lot about TF. And I've had some like really interesting conversations when I've started explaining some of that stuff, like, and in ways that I didn't necessarily expect. So I'll give an example. One time when I was explaining this, the other person was like, oh, do you have any, what was it that you said? Do you have any art examples? And I was like, Well, as a matter of fact, I do. Would it surprise you to know that I also produce this art content? So, that can also be a really easy segue. I remember one time I was like, just kind of like diving into it, and I was like, fuck it. And I just pulled out, there's a photo manip that I did 2 or 3 years ago now. It's me into a werewolf. Again, so we're talking like, ground level. But it's got my dick out and everything, and I was like, fuck it, we ball in. And I was just like, yeah, here you go. Here's an example. And it went fine. But again, like, that's also judging the situation, being like, can I be that level of vulnerable with this person? And in that case, I was like, I feel like I can be that vulnerable with this person.
Yeah, there's a measured risk. You being ready for the rejection or the that's part of like the self-awareness part.
Yeah.
That I think is really vital to. I keep bringing it up, but just to put it in context, there's another reason this works is, talking to new people, anticipating that is important so that you don't feel like crushed. Like you need to understand that you don't need to feel that way. Like they can ruin your night, sure, but to like internalize it, avoid internalizing that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, you hit the nail right on the head. It is so hard, I think, for people to deal with that kind of rejection because, again, to be honest, like when we talk
deeply
about
personal.
It's deeply personal. And so for someone to be like, oh, that's fucking weird. I mean, that brings up all of the potential shame you might have already had attached to being into this. There's a lot of other things that we tie towards like our interests, and like having that knocked down a peg is deeply hurtful. So, like you said, you have to kind of go into this. I don't want to say like with a thick skin because that's not really the right metaphor, but like basically you need to go in almost being prepared to get shot down in some cases. And it sucks to have to like mentally prepare for that, but if you are really dedicated towards actually experiencing some of these things in like a situation with someone else IRL, you have to like build that into like your modus operandi in terms of how you're approaching these situations. Like there's no other way. You just have to.
It's normalizing it. For anybody who doesn't understand what I mean by that, to normalize something is to just make it so that you don't interpret it as a cataclysm or very especially egregious events. It is a thing that can happen. It can be dealt with. Everything is worse when something happens and you feel like it's a big deal, but it doesn't have to be. And that goes with rejection. Overall, the way to normalize this is like, oh man, what if somebody makes fun of me or says like a really disgusting thing about me or says I'm a disgusting thing? And, that really happens with just about any situation, like fucking, go start a discourse on the internet about pineapple on pizza. Somebody will want you to go kill yourself. And it's like, goddamn, fine, asshole.
God, people get really weirdly intense about that one. I'm just like, Jesus.
Oh man, I just rather not. But I'll try a slice sometime. I just won't put it on my slice. Go fuck yourself. Anyway.
So you're not a pineapple on pizza person yourself.
I just haven't wanted it, but I also don't. I don't recoil at the idea because I've had Thai food where there's pineapple in it. It's like pineapple, peppers, chicken, peanuts. Onion, and I'm just and Steph. So I was hanging out with Steph and I first tried it, and I was just like, try it with the pineapple. I'm just like, oh shit, like I understand. I mean, I don't know. I guess pineapple on pizza is a pretty good metaphor. Just like it's like I like monsters with my sex.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not for everyone, but
it's not for everybody, but it's okay. First of all, it's okay when it's not. Preferably, they won't be a piece of shit about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if someone's going to be a piece of shit about it, that's not someone that you want to engage with in general, in my opinion. You've already, if anything, you are saving yourself time and pain, because if you were trying to go the long route of trying to get to know someone first and then bring it up, and then they're also still going to be a piece of shit, well, then you've sunk all this time into something, and now you feel like shit with this person, and you don't need that in your life.
Yeah, and I get that. I know that it's easy to hear that, but I swear, that's a good thing to internalize.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be talking about that kind of thing because you think you want to have fun with it, then yeah, that's good. I also think it's a good idea to not start, because you said you bring it up like a wedge and everything like that. You know how you said like, oh, here's an example, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just like, oh yeah, it's me with my dick out. Now, believe it or not, you could have made that weird if you went into it. It's just like, oh yeah, because, I really like it when this part hits my body, and that's the part that really starts to get me to like writhe in my pants, And that's what I was thinking about when I was making this. Like the entire time I kept revisiting the moments when this part of me would snap into place and that.
The second-hand embarrassment I am feeling as you are saying this right now is off the fucking charts.
You see, that is how you can take something like that and be like, oh, that's very bold. It is bold, but you did it the right way, where you're just like, here's an example, and you let them go with it. Like, putting like all of your lust out on the table to explain to somebody.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
For anything, let alone this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But okay, so
that's like my kind of first set of steps if I'm like dealing with a normie. If I've gotten them to this next part, then it's like it's the same with like a TF person, because again, I don't have to explain what a TF is. So you get to the TF part. Oftentimes, the quintessential question that comes up is, who is transforming in this situation? And as we've kind of like joked before, I think in other episodes on the podcast, I like to think of it, and again, this is not a one-to-one, but I like to think of it as like TF Dom, TF Sub, or TF or TFE. In these situations, are basically exclusively like TFer / TF Dom. Like, I want to TF other people. And I have theories about that. That's maybe a conversation for another time or later. But anyways, when we get to that part of the conversation, that's the first thing I start off with. And then we talk about, okay, so if you are interested in this, in me transforming you, let's have a conversation as to what things you're interested in becoming, what kind of situation or scenario or what have you might want to role play out. I am very good at telling people they're transforming. Just saying. Okay. And then...
Do not roll up in Zil's DMs. I will fucking kill you. Do not go doing that shit unsolicited.
Listen, as we said just like 2 episodes before, I don't role play anymore. So that's a big no-no.
I don't give a shit. But, I'm tripling down on stay the fuck out.
I appreciate it. If I deign to TF you one day, you will know because I will approach you. But anyways, so, what are like the scenarios, and of course, what are like your boundaries? Very important to talk, in my opinion, in advance in terms of what things you are willing to consent to and what you're not interested in, all that good stuff. Like, this is very important in my opinion, in all sexual situations. And yes, I know there's like the whole like, oh, but wouldn't it be nice if like this is happening and then they just knew? It's like, no, I'm sorry. I know that's how a lot of movies work, but if you want to actually have a good fucking time, you need to talk about this shit in advance, or even like during like giving guidance, okay? This should not be a conversation-free zone, okay?
You know what? Not even that. You can just keep it real simple sometimes. You don't always need to go into like the super nitty-gritty details. There is some room for playing it by ear. There is some.
Of course.
And besides, the talk itself can be foreplay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. It is. So I was going to say, with TF people in particular, it 100% is. Because you can be like, so, you want to become my little fucking... I don't fucking know. You want to be my little fucking werewolf. You want to, like...
You want to be one of the 15 behind the dumpster?
Yeah, you want me to have you be the person behind the dumpster. Okay, that's fine. I can work with that. Okay. Talking about like, oh, so you'd be interested if, I was sliding my cock in here and blah, blah, blah. Like you said, it can all be, a way to start getting the juices flowing. Uh-huh. But I do think it's important to have that conversation first, because if you're just like, I'm into TF, and the other person's like, okay, I can TF you. And then you're like,
no.
Like, what? You are not going to get what you think you're going to get. Yeah, that is a bad idea. Please talk about these things in advance. And I think also just in general, particularly like, if you're in convention space, for example, and you're engaging with people you don't know as well, piece of advice, always good to have protection. Please use protection. It is a very good thing to do. I promise you it can still be sexy. In fact, depending on what you're TFing to, it can even be part of the TF. So just keep that in mind.
Yep. Also, actually, I've done that.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, I've done that with condoms and stuff like that. It's just like, oh, nice. Yeah, it has to fit over the new shape and everything like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, huh?
There we go.
It's
Or
good.
even I've even like, for example, like, oh yeah, and maybe you're gonna turn into my little latex fuck toy or something, and now, oh wow, you can already feel it. Look, it's already happening. Oh, so anyways, it can play in very nicely to
You
a
can
lot of
get
that good stuff.
so creative.
You
So
can.
creative.
You can.
It's like the most important sexual organ is the brain.
Yes.
That is
Oh,
true in
100%.
every single instance, no matter how normal or typical the sex is, if your head is not in it, it will go nowhere.
It's true.
You know?
And to be clear, it's fair to like be nervous as well. Like no one's saying like, oh yeah, you're gonna go into your first sexual TF encounter and you're gonna be fucking like balls to the walls, gun blazing, no shame at all. It's gonna be like fucking like rainbows and sunshine. Of course, that's not how it's necessarily going to go. But even just putting yourself, again, with someone that you actually feel comfortable doing this with, putting yourself in that situation is a good first step, and it will lead to potentially better experiences down the road. But yes, the brain is the most important part in these situations. And again, as you kind of mentioned at the beginning, Libra, it's like so much of the actual like act itself will be partially like, you don't need toys or anything necessarily. It can be like vocalizing and imaginatory and all of those good things, and you can still get a really good fucking experience out of it.
Oh yeah, that is also how RP starts too with certain people. Depending on how
Yes.
comfortable you are, it's like I like these things and I like these things. And I get when these things happen. And I get these things happen. So if I were to do this, you'd be like, yeah. And if I were to do that, and before you know it, you're like, hey, I think I got someone.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a good fucking feeling when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, like once you've gone to that point and you're actually engaging in the situation, I mean, it's going to vary based on what you're kind of role playing out. Again, if there's like toys involved, obviously that's like a whole separate thing in terms of like talking first about how to use them and then like actually using them as you're going through. But I mean, I found, in my opinion, the most important part of those kinds of situations, like in the moment, is the actual vocalizing of things. And what I mean is often like, thinking about my own experience, like telling the person these things are happening and then, like stimulating them physically in whatever way they're doing. So be it
Or
stretching the
asking them, do
nose
you
or,
feel that? Do you feel that? Things like
yeah,
that. It's just like, or you're looking like this, or like I see you, I feel you doing blah.
yeah,
You know, you
exactly.
can impress those things on them as you're doing stuff together.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you add nicknames, and all other kinds of little touches.
Oh yeah, I mean the especially when you're doing TF stuff, it's like there will be a part in the interaction when you stop using the human name or whatever, and you start referring to them by their new name or their new species or what have you. I mean,
Oh yeah.
chef's kiss every time, every fucking time.
And maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh, duh. But like, if you haven't actually tried it and you would like to, watch. You fucking watch.
Yeah.
You do it, and you will find your flame.
But I mean, that's kind of my general process. I guess I've been talking a bunch about my process. Do you have a process, Libra, that you follow through?
Well, which process? The when I'm already in it, or when I'm gonna go like find somebody? Because that shit sort of falls into my lap.
I mean, that's true. You're just a baller, so I mean, maybe you just don't have to like do much work to
I
find
just,
people. So I don't know. Maybe you don't have those steps. I don't
I
know.
just, okay. So, if I've ever had to bring it up, it's like I'm pretty direct about it, and I'm very flat
Yeah,
about it. It's just
yeah,
like, oh, what is this thing that you like? Oh, like what, people turning into monsters? Like, yeah. And you're like, oh, so you find that interesting? Yeah. It's like, oh, what kinds of things? I will show them things. I remember showing at least one. Yeah, he doesn't work there anymore, but he was my manager, and I was just like, I'm gonna show him this one.
hmm
And he was just like, oh, that's really fucking cool. Do I need to tell him that I was like really fascinated with like the bird beak thing because I wanted to make that really good? Because birds have like really weird changes, and I really like seeing the human body do that, and I think that's hot. No, I don't need to do that.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm pretty direct if it ever comes up, and usually it doesn't, because I don't find a lot of reason to have people accept that part of me. So yeah, when it comes to meeting people, I think also there's the advantage that I'm an artist, so people can see my stuff, and if I end up like talking to them, maybe they're not into it, And that's
Yeah.
usually been my experience. I will speak to another artist and I'll be like, oh shit, you did this. It's really cool. And then sometimes if they're not into it, they'll be like, so what's this about? I'd be like, well, yeah, I like people turning into monsters. I think it's really cool. And, because it's very fucking obvious. I'm like, yeah, and I think it's an attractive thing, and they're usually going to be like, oh, and then I will sometimes just throw a bit more in to be like, yeah, it's a thing that I like in certain measures. It seems like it could be like a euphoric feeling. So,
Right.
there's like a sexiness to it. And sometimes that will like foster like further conversation about it or not. Usually it has interested people. So people who like have seen my work for a while or have just noticed it, and they're just like, wow, I've never seen stuff like this before. Or like, I think I've seen it, but you do it in such a way where, like, I don't know, it's interesting to me. And I'm like, okay. So that's generally how I end up bringing up the subject, because if art doesn't come up, I don't have a real opportunity to
Right.
bring it up. And I don't like swing a ton, so like,
Yeah,
hey.
no, that's fair. Like, basically, you already have these kind of established avenues, and you're not really going to be looking outside of those anyway. So, like, a lot of that other shit is not really necessary.
It's not necessary, but I would treat it just like, I think I know how I would carry myself. And, you doing it is, I think because you do identify as a furry, bringing that up is apt for you, but I don't identify as that. So
Right,
for me, my avenue is like, either you think I am, typical, or I'm going to tell you this and suddenly I'm strange to you. Will I be strange and interesting, or strange and repulsive? I don't know. But I think that goes with like just about anything, because I can repulse people with like simple shit, like inane nerdy garbage. It's like, oh, you like toys, don't you? You like build those Gundam toys. Like, uh-huh.
Yeah, and
Do you have a fulfilling pastime yourself? I mean, I know you probably jerk off the same way I do. No, not the same way. Maybe you
no,
got
not
something.
even remotely the same way.
Yeah. You know what? That's right. Nobody thinks about what could be happening to themselves while they're playing with themselves.
No, they're not. They're just like, ugh. Honestly, I would like show my entire fucking ass and be like, honestly, people who like don't have a kink of any kind, what the fuck are you thinking about when you jerk off? Like, I don't understand it.
Okay,
Anyways,
wait. Hold on. No, I will tell you.
Okay.
Because okay, let me ask you, is it a must for you that like transformation, or at least like the other furry stuff, be involved for you to actually be stimulated, to be interested?
So I want to say yes and no, and I'll explain what I mean by that. In pretty much every single like time I've come, it has been involved in my mind, at least in some way. Not necessarily, like, it doesn't need to be explicitly being like said as part of an act or something. Like, I can do an act and nothing has to be said.
Yeah.
But I'm probably going to be thinking about it. So it doesn't need to be involved, but I'm going to be thinking about it. And that's why I posed the question, because I'm like, what do normies think about when they get off? I actually am like,
okay.
Question mark.
All right. I have the advantage where, and this is where I'm definitely going to sound like a piece of shit, but there's no other way for me to put it. I'm actually attracted to just simple human women. And
sorry, I know you prefaced it by that, and I get what you're saying, but also that is funny because it does make you sound like a piece of shit.
It does, but I'm like, I don't have the concern or the what can I say, unrequited desire,
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So I'm just like, yeah, she's hot. Oh yeah, that's good. I know what feelings come with like these things and these looks and like all this, and that gets me stimulated because I'm like, now I have a frame of reference for the experience with like just the person. So I'm so when you're like, what do you think about? I think about what it feels like, to be like in the middle of the fucking, in the middle of the sucking. Mm-hmm. How does she sound? How is she moving? All these things are just adjacent to, to pleasure, like lots and lots of pleasure.
Okay.
So like, and not to mention, it's pleasure is a simple thing. If you're feeling
Yeah, of
it,
course.
then you're just feeling it. So like, what are you doing? What are you thinking about when you're jerking off? I don't know. Whatever is most adjacent to your pleasurable experience, whether it's dick and pussy, or like sucking nipples, or whatever, or hearing some moans. Like, you can think about that stuff. So
Right.
it's so like I'm being sincere about this, because
Yeah,
it's
no, I
like
know.
I know how, like, if you feel like you're so far removed from other people, in your desires, let me just tell you, it's really not that strange, and you can just and really it's all like really more closely related to you than you think.
Yeah, and to be clear, I clearly don't think it's strange because that is the majority of the population, to be clear. But that does actually kind of explain it for me, in the sense of, like, it's more about thinking about the act and the sensations that are associated with the act than some other, like, kind of third thing, which is
Yeah,
essentially like the kink in our case of, like, TF or what have you. Like, you are wholly satisfied in those moments with just thinking about the act itself and the people involved, and that's it.
yeah, because you're like,
Gotcha.
man, do you know how good it feels to come? Well, all this stuff makes me think of that. Boy, I'd sure like to come now, and
Yeah.
hard. You know,
No,
it
that makes sense.
And like now, if I want to include changing, it's just such an added flavor, because man, it's just the special kind of desire. I want to see like this kind of contortion or this kind of
Mhm.
expansion.
To use a metaphor, because I do like this kind of a metaphor, it's almost like if you bake a cake and you are happy with a cake as it is, or you can add icing onto it, and either way you're going to be happy. You're like, damn, that's some good cake. And I guess in my case, to some degree, if the cake don't have icing on it, I'm not interested.
Well, I think that's for a lot of people with cake, because
Yeah,
that's the expectation. Like you
yeah.
Canadians and your need for pepperoni on pizza, but you don't even know what a good pizza is because you always got pepperoni to be a crutch. You fucks.
Oh my god. I mean, Canadian pizza is uniquely garbage, but that's that's a story for another time. It is though, like straight up, it's garbage.
like that's pretty good with like the cake thing. I also like to think of this one. This it was like a meme. It's like this
Mhm.
very attractive anime girl. It's like I like this. It's like this is very nice, and then you have like pretty much the same girl, but she's like very buff, and it's like, but I like this. It's like this is very nice, but I like this.
Mhm.
And I feel that way kind of with transformation, because I'll tell you right now, if I could have it, I totally would.
Yeah.
I totally would. I would pick it. I would pick it like almost every time. I will never be like, with just like,
Mhm.
oh, it's like inferior human, but but I would pick it all the times that I can, because that's what I really really want. And it's funny because if I talk about like the process with other people and getting them into it, I think I want to see if you'll like it too, because you might.
Mhm.
People end up liking it. You'll have to frame it a certain way.
Yeah, I gotta say, there is something uniquely exciting and enjoyable about getting other people into it, in my
By
opinion.
turning them into something else.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
you change their
yes,
minds. You change
yes.
them. Yeah.
Because there's also a sense of personal pride of, like, ah, yes, I was so good in this situation that now you're rethinking what you're into because you're like, damn, this was good. There's a,
Yeah.
oh,
It's just
that
like,
that
man,
shit
that
is
was.
good.
Yeah, like, ooh, I was thinking about that, and I thought, what if this in this situation? I'm just like, there it is. There it is.
It's true. The
You know?
epiphany. It has happened.
And then again, and I'll say it again, they might give you an idea that you wish you thought of.
Oh, yeah.
Because trust me, I think it's great that you're bringing up how to deal with people outside of the fandoms and shit, because you will get more from people that are not, that are out of there. They will have a
Mhm.
fresh perspective. You stay insular, you're not gonna. you're going to stay comfortable, but you won't get anything like new and fun.
And just on a practical level, there's obviously far less of us in the community that are like, accessible, going to be into the exact same things you are. TF is a big umbrella. There might be someone who is actually nearby and into TF, but like something completely different from you, and then it's not a match. Or maybe you're both TF doms, and then what the fuck do you do with that? Or
you switch.
There's so many.
No, wait, hold on. That's what you do. Because like, holy shit.
I'm not disagreeing. That is what you should do in that situation, but not everyone is open to that.
Fuck them. Or don't.
Well, yes, or don't in that situation. I'm just saying, what I'm saying is I'm agreeing with you in the sense of it's important to have those kind of options of a fresh perspective, because if you are restricting yourself to a much smaller pool of people, you are setting yourself up for a lot more disappointment just by the very nature of variation of people. Like, we're all very varied in our interests and what we like and what we don't like. And if you're already like taking out like 99% of the population, it's not 99%, but you're taking out 99% of the population, and you're like, no, I will not look at that bucket. I will only look at this 1%. Well, you have drastically cut down on the potential opportunities that you could have to have a good fucking time.
Actually bottleneck yourself.
Yeah.
That's how species literally die.
That's how species die. And we do want the TF community to fucking reproduce clearly, so,
Yeah, it's a slow process sometimes, but, it all depends. You can either do a few at a time, or, depending, if you make the content, you might make a few more here and there, little batches.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but now I'm wondering, like, how deep do you want to go? Do you want to talk about actual things you've done with people?
Yes. I mean, I think we should give the audience what they want. I think we've danced around it long enough.
Yeah, all right. Now that the foreplay
the foreplay is done.
And I am ready. I'm ready, darling. Come on.
Okay. One I will mention off the top of my head, one that kind of stuck with me. So, there was a convention that I went to, and at the convention, there was someone who was really interested in meeting up and doing things. And I was like, yeah, I'm down for that. I'm happy to do said things. It sounds like a good time. I'm going to anonymize this because, whatever.
Yeah.
But in particular, like, this person really wanted me to fuck them into being something else. That was the draw. Again, keeping it kind of vague, but they wanted me to fuck them into something else. That was the whole fucking draw of it. And I was like, yeah, I can definitely do that. I'm into that. So one of the things, first of all, I did the whole fucking thing that I mentioned at the top, which is, talking about what kind of things you want to become, or in this case, like the specific thing they wanted to become. And, what kind of things would you like me to be doing in that situation? In those situations where I'm not like TFing myself, one of the things that I do like to get a sense of in advance is things that you may or may not want to be called. Because, I have my own thoughts on a lot of this, but like personally, I don't like to use like super derogatory terms. That's just not something I'm really into.
Like what?
Kind of ruins. Okay, so like for example, if someone's like, I would like you to use like X slur, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. That's immediate turn off for me. No, thank you. Don't want that. Things that I am interested in talking about, like, oh, you're going to be like, for example, you're going to be my good boy or something. Like, terms like that, I'm like, okay, I can get behind that. Or like, yes, you're signing away your humanity now to me, and I'm going to toy with it, because that's what you want, right? Blah, blah, blah. Stuff like that. It's like, okay, we're kosher. I can go with this. Okay. So I like to sort those things out in advance, because that's also something that can be like an immediate mood killer for people. So again, good to talk about these things in advance. So talked about that, and then talked kind of through like what the actual scenario would be. And again, like you said, you can use this as a kind of a foreplay. It's like, oh, so you want me to do this. And then you might feel that. And then there's going to be a focus on this part. Stuff like that to really set the mood and start to get things going. And then in this particular situation, I mean, there was kind of a whole lead up of like, okay, I am basically assuming a particular role. And my role in the situation was that, again, I was going to fuck this person into something else. And so I started off with like a lot of like teasing, because that's definitely something that gets people going. It's like, oh, so this is going to happen and you're sure you want this? And like, it's like, yeah. And it's like, okay, so, we're going to do this one thing and that's going to start the changes. After this, there's no turning back. Yeah. And it's like, uh-huh. And then like you do that thing and then it's like, okay, yeah, now you're feeling this. Oh, I can notice that. Oh, yeah, let me feel that. Oh, you feel that? Mm-hmm. Stuff like that. And then you just kind of go from there. In this case, again, it was fucking someone into being something else. And so, yeah, I guess that's an overview. I don't know. Do you have any questions on that?
So is that a general approach that you like to include with a partner who would be into it, or do you have like other little things? And if you have it switched, do you have preferences for like what people would say to you? Because even though you are, a dominant force, you like being in the position too. So, like, how's that roll for you?
Yeah, I mean, in the situations where I'm the person that's getting changed, I will say that I still prefer to also be the person who's, like, kind of the dom in control still. So, in those situations, for example, it's been like, oh yes, this thing I am going to cause to myself. And you are going to interact with me as that is happening in the way that I'm telling you to. So it's like, yeah, you're going to do this as I'm changing. So like, for example, one thing that I'm very big on is rubber bulges, because I'm pool toy Jesus. So, if I'm getting a bulge or something, or like a no bulge or whatever, it's like, yeah, I want you to like feel it in that way. Yeah, you like feeling that, don't you? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, why don't you put your face in there and stuff like that. Like, I'm still doing a lot of like directing to some degree, because that's the kind of role
so
that I like to
you become
assume.
Power bottom.
Yes, in those situations, I guess, yes, that would be the case.
That like just like screams power bottom to me, where it's just
I guess
like,
it does.
Like you're gonna have your fun with me the way I want it, or there will be no fun.
Yes, literally, that is basically what I do. And again, like I talk about this in advance, so it's like, again, it's not a surprise in those situations.
Yeah, I mean,
but,
that like. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but if it just happens to come up and you didn't talk about it before, that's like the least egregious thing to be.
Oh yeah,
because you know what that comes off as, like in the most rudimentary sense. It just comes off as like demanding. So it's just like give it now.
People are into that. People are into being demanded of.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, like even then it can come off as just like, oh, I'm doing so good, and they're feeling so good, and this is so hot. It's a very easy thing to kind of like slip in there if you just happen to forget about it or something.
Oh yeah. Like again, like I'm not saying you need to like lay everything out step by step. I've definitely had situations where that's not the case too, and like there's more improv and all that stuff, and that shit's hot too. Like it's just I just always think it's good to set at least like some.
Yeah, I get it. I'm bringing that up. I'm bringing that up as a contingency in case there are the people who are legitimately concerned. Just be like, oh man, I don't want to forget anything. Like it's fine. It's okay. And
I will also say, after I was done railing this person, the one thing I will say is that aftercare is very important. So please, 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 if you are going to do these things, please also build in aftercare into your routine. And I'm not saying you need to do a fucking like survey after the act and be like, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how was I? But like, make sure the person's okay, especially if it gets really fucking intense. Like, just that is a fucking good practice. And I feel like not enough people do that. So please, please, please do some aftercare. Anyway, sorry, you were going to say something.
Just to build on that, like, yes, indeed. But also, I think, like, hey, in general, you should check on how your partners are doing.
Of course.
Absolutely. In general. Like, hey, you're good? You good? Something happened? Like, do you need anything? Do you need anything more from me? Yeah, I think that needs to be incorporated as a standard. Never mind if you're doing anything remotely kinky. Just be like, are you okay?
Before, during, and after, baby. It should be all those 3 times.
Yeah. I like that. But okay, I think that's really interesting, and that's fun because then it shows that, like, you are very dominant, and that's actually I find that charming because
you find it charming?
I do. I'm just like, look at you, you motherfucker.
Well, like I remember the first time we talked about this. The first time we talked about this, when I told you that I was like a dom, you were like, what? And I was like, I don't think this is an insult, but I don't know how to react to this reaction.
Mostly because, like, you don't come off as like terribly. God, what's the term I'm looking for? You don't come off as like pushy. You're
Mm-hmm.
at like a baseline, you are nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Thank
flatly
you.
nice, but
Mm-hmm.
like you're very like generous. You're willing to go out of your way. We're friends for a reason. But like because I don't really see you just like do that with people, like as a normal thing. I'm just like, oh
Mm-hmm.
well, I guess like oh, that's the other thing. It's because I see you as the subject all the time.
Ah, yes,
So
that's fair.
that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that is why that
That's a
that is
big part
why
of it.
I
Yeah.
made it too complicated. But that's the simplest fucking reason. You get commissions of you, the subject, all the time. You are the one that is put through all kinds of situations.
Yeah.
I'm just like, hey, I guess you'd prefer someone to take control and turn you into stuff, or for a situation to like spin out of control and give you a good time. So that is where I got the idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and that's a very
So
fair
so I hope that makes
reason to
you
come to
like
that.
not feel as like what or insulted.
Oh, I wasn't insulted. I thought it was funny. But no, that
Okay.
is a good point. And I mean, that is a fair thing to say, like, God, there's so much part of me TFing into things. And yeah, that is generally like, it's often in depictions of situations that are beyond my control in that scenario. So that's a fair point to make. And I think also for me, maybe part of the reason why there's this disconnect, when I am in those situations, I don't want to say like I have a different persona because that's not really the case, but like it does feel like I'm activating a different part of my mind. And in those situations in particular, I feel like there's a deep desire for me to just be in control of the narrative or whatever is going on. And being in control doesn't mean like it needs to go my way, but I mean in control and like I would like to make sure both myself and the other person are having a good time, but I would like things to kind of proceed in a way that I am most comfortable with. And the best way that I can almost ensure that to some degree is to be the one who is the domineering one.
Well,
So,
that's the way you enforce your boundaries.
yeah, pretty much.
And in a casual situation, that is incredibly important.
Yeah, exactly.
And since you've had a number of at least semi-casual encounters,
Mm-hmm.
that is good for you in so many different ways. So it makes
Yeah,
perfect sense too.
yeah.
Like because I'll tell you, I have had like I can have a little bit of pride in like, oh yeah, this person is known as like very dominant. And it's like, but they really like it when I'm just like, hey, you're gonna be my good little creature, aren't you? Just like, you want to continue feeling that, huh? You're gonna be good. Don't worry, I'm gonna give you more. And they're just like,
Yeah. Oh
It's
yeah, no,
like,
I
uh-huh.
that's always so fun and satisfying to see. So I totally get where you're coming from
Yeah, yeah, and
too.
and so I'm like, so yeah, that just feels really nice.
Yeah. Well, then I'll turn the question to you. What about you? What have your experiences been like?
My experiences have been quite varied because I've done it a lot. I've done it a bunch. I have managed to like to play CTF into it.
Fuck yes.
Yeah.
That one is a lot of fun to do. I will just say, by the way, 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Yeah,
Just
like
saying.
I don't really know how you did it, but for me it was very much like because I indulge in the idea of fleshcraft, which is
Mm.
people ask me what it is, but whatever, for the sake of anybody that might ask. It's just the idea that you can mold somebody's form with your hands, like, very tactile. You force the shape, you mold it like clay, or even
Mm.
like other ways. It's just kind of like, oh, if you touch a spot, but then you pull your finger away, the body starts to change to follow it, that kind of shit. You know,
Yeah.
like hand and touch means transformation. So for like that, it's like, get behind, get inside, start touching all over the place. Make sure that, you assert that the arms are supposed to stay in a certain place. And then it's just like, you feel that. It's just like, it's just like get nice and rigid, get into the shape and keep going until that's over. And then it's like, yeah, that's fun, you
Yeah.
know? And, and that is also how that's also how I do a lot of the role play stuff, is that because the people who I get with, you know, I tell them it's just like, oh yes, you know, I'm going to turn you into the monster, you know, and things like that. And it's just like, I'm going to like massage parts, you know, or I'm going to touch, I'm going to imply, I'm going to like play with the tips of the fingers to make pads form, or I'm going to, you know, curl the fingers and kind of push them back to make them like kind of like configure like paws. You know, I have done something where like, you know, I don't want you to speak anymore. You're going to like, you know, speak monster or whatever kind of thing. So it's just like in like the most gentle way. I mean this, just like a gentle but like slightly firm like press of like the throat, where it's just like, you know, now your voice is going to change, you know, all kinds of things. Those are the kind of things that I have done, and that's generally what I end up doing. And is there anything like specific?
Are there any specific like scenarios that you like default to, or like are you a lot more free form, like you were mentioning kind of before, in terms of like, oh, you know, maybe it's going to be a fucking Russian roulette TF, we don't know what you're going to become kind of thing?
It really depends on the partner. Often they've had, you know, their own kind of thing that they're most comfortable with. And, you know, I often find what they're already comfortable with to be attractive. So I'm very okay with returning to that. Like, oh, you're going to be some kind of like big cat, because that's what you like to be. Or like, oh, you're gonna be like some kind of dragon monster. You're going to be, you know, like a bear thing or something. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm okay with playing this scenario out in a bunch of different ways and revisiting them, and like finding different catalysts and things like that. And also specific to my experiences, and this came with a lot of time. And now this is going to be like the loudest place for anybody to actually hear it. But I like to be changed too. Yeah, I do.
Spicy.
Yeah, and you know, that's because I don't really like to tell people about it, because I want people to largely leave me the fuck alone.
Yes. And then I will also say, if you fucking bombard Libra's DMs, I will fucking find you. So don't do that shit.
Yeah. Or, I don't know, if you get that thirsty, we'll make a Patreon tier for it.
Oh, God.
But it will be premium.
Oh, God.
Hey, you want to break in the sex word?
No, I'm good. You know what? I am good. I would not like to do
How
that.
much do you want to whore yourself?
Oh, God. Listen, please, my dick is all over the place in my art. You can see it for fucking $0.0 on Twitter.com. Okay, I think we're good.
You are the best slut. You're the sluttiest
It's
slut.
true. I am a slut, and I own it, and I love my exhibitionism. Thank you very much.
I really wish I would have saved that comic strip. Do you even know what I'm talking about? I don't know if you possibly.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It is a very well drawn strip of art, and I hope somebody else that's listening remembers this. But it's this woman who's talking on the phone, and she's like getting really angry. And it's just like, "Oh, you're a slut." It's like, "What? I'm a slut? Yeah, fine. I'm a slut. I'm not just a slut. I'm the best slut. I am the greatest slut that has ever slutted on this whole earth." And then the end is just like this. It's like a glamour pose, and the frame is like glowing with flowers, and she's just like, and she looks like wonderful. And I fucking that's what I think of. Like, I'm the best slut.
That's me. Just imagine me doing that right now. That's what I'm fucking doing. Just
yeah. Oh my god. I hope somebody can find it. I will save that, and I will put it a bunch of places to make sure I never lose it.
I love that. That.
But yeah, I appreciate you going to bat for me like that. But yeah, I like being changed, and that comes with a lot of trust. It's the sort of thing where like it's the kind of thing where if you ever try to push it out of me, it's like, oh, you want to grow those big teeth and use them on me? Yeah, I'll kill you. You're like, oh, that's really hot. Like, oh, just die already. Speaking of which, I can't relate to the people who be like, oh, yes, I want to die underneath you. Like, no, I want to live.
Yeah, that part I've never been huge into. I mean, again, gestures to the interlude where I talked about identity death, but again, I think I view it a different way. The actual death, yeah, I'm not into that. I'm like, I don't, not for me. But hey, if that's your thing, I hope you die happy in those situations.
And also a callback to anybody who doesn't get the identity death thing. The reason that is interesting is because I don't think what Zil likes is identity death. It just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah,
Whatever. Okay.
Oh, taking away your special token for specialness. Like, I like identity death, and now you're telling me I don't identify that way.
Listen, we joked that the term that I would use is id sup, and fine, but
why should that be a joke? I still think it's good. I think
it is
good.
too.
Anyway, so I want to turn into a monster sometimes. So it's like, bring that out of me. Make me lose my control. Make me lose the inhibition. Just let my whole body, like, get into it. That shit can feel awesome. All right?
Fuck yeah.
Now, you could apply it to yourself and to your partners like that, because that's another thing I do. I like to make sure that, they want those changes, right?
Right,
and you could play with them, you could tease them, you could bring them on like full swing. You could do like nothing involving that and then bring it up like halfway through or most of the way, and then suddenly you're like, oh shit, oh my god, things just got stepped up, and then and then it's just like, it's like, this is how the fun ends, with a bang.
Yeah.
With a bang until you whimper.
Now that you mentioned that did remind me of a time where I did like play out a scenario with someone where like it was supposed to like be like the start of it was like, oh, I'm the one who's going to be changed and blah blah, but then it's like, aha, joke's on you, you're changing now, and I'm going to take the power as I've also already changed. It's a lot of fun. So
okay, yeah, and also it's awesome if your partner will like, a monster or something like that, because if you act that out with your body language, if you like tense your body, things like that, if you just like get, whatever happens to you, I swear, like, it'll come naturally, even if you got to think about it for a little while, but it'll become sincere, and when your partner sees that, they're going to get so into the fact that you are like that turned on, that into it. And like, holy shit, like, that's the big pleasure feedback loop. Suddenly you're having like an awesome time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the physicality makes such a big difference in these situations. And again, obviously you should do what feels natural, but if you really want to get into it, it makes for a better time for everyone involved. Just saying.
Yeah. And and all of this has to do with like the mindset, and a few touches with like whatever you like to do. You can get as elaborate as you want. Like, there have been some like props used, like I think a bit with like, you put on some gloves, mask, little things like that. You go as far as you want.
Yeah.
But because a lot of that stuff is either impractical, not accessible, all this kind of shit, your imagination, how you talk, how you touch, how you carry yourself, you can bring that to your partners, and they can, and say that, they're not really into it, but they are completely accepting of it, and they like to just make you happy. Maybe that doesn't feel like, they don't like fully understand. You don't need to be sad about that. They, you allow them to do that with you, and they can like really start to hit your spots. And suddenly you're like, oh man, I forgot that you're not into it. And it's just like, yeah, I'm not into it, but I want to make you happy.
Exactly. Oh, I've definitely been in that situation before, and in my opinion, it's still meaningful. In fact, in almost some ways, it's even more, because someone is wanting to make sure that you are having a good time, even if it's not a kink that they necessarily have, and they're going out of their way to be thoughtful about that. To me, in some ways, that's even more meaningful, because it shows to you that you have been vulnerable with this person, and they are respectful of that and want to make sure that that vulnerability doesn't go unnoticed. So I completely agree.
Yeah, and I mean, I would like more people to experience that, and it requires taking chances. That's really it. There's no there's no elegant way of putting it. You got to take your chances.
Yeah.
And the chances can suck, and fear is, half of fear is perception, I feel. And it's worth it. It really is.
Absolutely.
It can be done.
Yeah, like, to be transparent, like, I have been rejected before, both from, like, the normie side, but even to the furry stuff.
If you've never been rejected, you should be like, damn, man, I don't know. I'm thinking you should be some kind of billionaire by now to not be rejected.
Yeah, I know, right?
That is some Gambit level shit.
Yeah.
You know about that? Did I mention that power that Gambit has? It's the one power that don't really talk about.
Yeah, no, that one I've heard before.
The suggestion power. Yeah, it's fucking like.
That's great.
It only doesn't work if he has it. It doesn't work.
Yeah, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, to be clear, like, we've laid out like a bunch of steps, but like, you can do all the right things and it can still just not work out, and that's fine. Again, that's, I think, harkens back to what we were talking about with the rejection thing. Like, you have to build in that to some degree, and I've definitely experienced it before too. And yeah, it's not necessarily a great feeling, but if you are really keen on actually having these kinds of experiences, then yeah, you do have to make mistakes and get messy and feel things out with people. That's just how it is. That's life.
Feel them out, and then you may feel them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And yeah, I don't know. I think also, like, all of this advice applies to just so many different things in general, in the sense of, like, yeah, sometimes you have to, like, take a chance on things, take a chance on people, even outside of, like, just kind of, like, direct, like, TF stuff. Like, even just, like, opening up to people that you care about TF, and not having, like, a sexual thing as, like, the impetus of that, and, like, opening up to other people about it. Like, again,
you can break through it all and become undefeatable.
I see what you did there.
It all comes back. It all comes back.
It all comes back to Sonic. It's true. Oh man,
it's good to talk about this, because I really find it unfortunate that people get caught up in the idea that it's not real, and it makes them like really fucking upset sometimes.
Yeah.
And man, life is a fine thing to have, as awful as it can be. It's just there's a lot to get out of it. You should get some too.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, like, I think as well, I think when we talk about IRL, like, kind of situations involving TF, there's a bit of a dearth of people who talk about it. Shout out, of course, to Double Helix, who did lots of talking about it before we did. But, like, beyond that, it's actually quite difficult to kind of find those kinds of conversations that are, like, accessible for people to listen to. So I hope that people get something out of this as well, because, again, part of, I think, the overall kind of goal of what we do here is to talk about interesting topics related to TF, and having sex and involving TF in that is definitely a part of that, It's an important part for a lot of people.
Yeah, because if that's the kink, it's just like, oh man, it's not real, so it ends there. Like, oh man, you're doing it to yourself now.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't have to. It's fun is better when you share it with others.
Yeah.
And that's what we like to do. We're sharing our fun with you.
We are, and I hope it's fun for y'all as well. So
yeah, and also, like, I would seriously like people's input. Leave comments or tweet or whatever. Fucking, you can tell us if you have a question or maybe like a different aspect to kind of go into, because, hey, we're kind of like shooting off a few things here and there, talking about this stuff, and it's a huge topic, and we can always go deeper. We can always go deeper into this. You know,
always go deeper.
40 plus episodes, motherfuckers, and
Yeah.
we're not out of shit anytime soon.
I mean, we joke about it, but also mean it seriously. I mean, we could talk about this stuff forever, honestly. It's just that there's that many permutations of TF. And actually, speaking of questions about TF, we did have a question that I almost forgot, but wanted to highlight. So,
Okay.
Libra, you remember the question about the hive minds from Max Velocity?
Uh-huh.
So Max Velocity had a follow-up, and it was that, to clarify, their question was indeed about TFs that subsume you into a centralized or decentralized hive mind that would indeed cause loss of autonomy. So now that you have the question clarified, do you have a rant for us, or?
I don't really understand why somebody would want to be put in that kind of situation. It is identity death. That kind of shit is described in, get ready, Berserk.
Oh my god.
Take
a shot. Take a shot.
It is no shit. All right. It is described in the story that people who die and are, pretty much sentenced to what hell is, you get swept up into this like sea of souls and emotions and thoughts, and you cannot possibly exist in it as an individual, so you become lost forever, so you feel this incredible torment until it's nothing but oblivion. You become a tide of terrible things. That's your fate. And I think that's fucking horrifying. So then you got this fucking hive mind, and now you're gonna be stuck with just this constant now you're a tool. So life doesn't really matter. I don't really see the point in enjoying anything, because it's not going to be about enjoying anything. You're just going to be there existing for what you're being told to do. And I'm kind of like, I mean, if you don't want to live, that's a very elaborate way of doing it. I don't get it. I don't see the appeal other than I don't want to deal with anything anymore. But also, I mean, you could get drunk and pass out for the same effect, and you can go back to being okay, maybe?
Okay, so I'm not someone who's into hive mind TF, but let me try to posit a counterpoint here. So, for some people, I think, and again, thinking about this from a more positive perspective instead of being lost forever to oblivion, for some people, the idea of a hive mind might be attractive to them from the sense of yes, obviously you are not fully in control, but it is a pleasant experience. So for example, maybe you feel very calm. You feel very surrounded by warmth and other people who are there to comfort you. And just because you have your loss of autonomy doesn't necessarily mean that you in that situation are feeling bad, because perhaps it feels good to let go of the wheel for a time and be a part of this entity that is bigger than yourself and also extends to you warmth and comfort and shelter and what have you. I don't know if any of that resonates with you at all, but
if it does that, because the implication of being part of a hive mind is that your self comes never.
Well, it comes after the needs of the whole. Yes, that is true.
Well, I mean, I say never because if you are demanded to do a thing and it's a sacrifice on your part, whether you make it out or not of that sacrifice, then that's it. And you did the thing because you had to.
Yeah, that's true. That could be an outcome.
You can manipulate that situation into what you said. But that typically is not what comes out of it. So, I'm going to stick with the general framing, which is this is it. Your existence is dependent on the bigger machine. You are the bigger machine, and you will never be like the entire machine, because you only matter as a small part. You are interchangeable practically, And that is where I'm looking at it and thinking, if you just want to lose control, if you want to surrender that much control, then I don't know, I just don't, I don't get it. If you wanted to be part of a pleasure network or something like that, that's something else that I've seen. It can also be kind of scary because, of course, you're just kind of like, now you're a mindless fuck machine. And people are like, I want to be a mindless fuck machine. I'm like, well, when that's literally all there is, I'm kind of like, it's like, you gotta have the contrast. Unless, like, and actually, this could be framed as a horrific situation as well, where you're like, okay,
of course.
So everything is centered around pleasure, right? Mm-hmm. But, like, imagine if, like, in order to stave off, like, sheer agony or madness, or, you know, or one bringing on the other, you must find someone or an outlet, which can lead to some pretty fucked up things you'd have to do to get it, or leave you in a fucked up situation if you can't. And that's your problem to deal with. You know, what if the system begins to break down and die, you know, because nothing stays the same? What if you have to be part of, like, that slow death? And I'm just kind of like, you know, if I wasn't stuck to this, you know, if I wasn't dying with the rest of this simply because one part got fucked up, I wouldn't be in this shape.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what, like, I don't know, it's funny because I was just thinking of CTF again, and I'm just like, I would, like, I prefer the one who gets changed into the dick to, like, be completely aware. I like the idea of, like, merging that has, like, coexisting consciousness, you know? Yeah. If one is, like, you know, trusting enough to, like, exist in the other's body, not feel like in prison, but it's just like now and along for the ride, you know? Yeah. But, like, you know, you'll feel some of my feelings, or at least physically, like, that will affect you and things like that. You know, if you want to, like, spread that out into, like, a big thing for, like, what could be considered a hive mentality, then, you know, there's some fun I can understand. But as presented here, I'm just kind of like, I don't know, man. The way it sounds is like you're barely going to be conscious for the experience. So that's why I find it pointless conceptually.
Yeah, that's fair. It's fair. I mean, as someone who is definitely not opposed to being a mindless fuck machine, I mean, I can see the appeal from that angle, but yeah, I do agree. I think, at least personally, I don't find a huge appeal to, like, being a part of a hive mind. Merge is a little bit different in the sense of, like, it's with, like, one specific person and it's to do, like, maybe a specific function.
It could be, could be many, it could be several. Like, I'm, like, I don't know. I'm trying to, like, I'm digging up, like, the adjacent thoughts because you wanted a rant, and that's what you got. That's what you got.
That's
there,
true.
You got it.
The rant has been delivered.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't get it. And there's potential to have fun with that, because if I frame anything in my favor, of course I'll like it. But going with that premise, that's how I feel about it. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not big on it either, honestly. If it's, like, a CTF thing, or, like, another, like, sort of, like, merge to, like, a specific person, I can be very much down with that. In terms of the way that I was, like, trying to reframe it, in those situations, again, I could see the appeal, even if it's not, like, my, like, number one, or, like, really anything like that, or would come to mind. In the, like, very much just like, oh, you lose your autonomy, you're part of this whole other thing, and you have no control. That sounds more like a horror situation to me than a sexy situation. So as presented, I'm also, like, not about that. Again, like you said, you can reframe anything to be, like, something you're into, and I've kind of posited a few things, but yeah, myself personally, like, the thing I think of is the Borg, and I would not like to be a part of the Borg. No, thank you.
Oh man, like, you're like, okay, it's just, it'd be fun if you would, like, network yourself with, like, a few other people, right? And then you all just kind of, like, group fuck, like, this one person.
Oh, yeah.
And all of you are just bouncing. Actually, wait. Somebody already did that. I forgot. There is a comic, right, with Beast Boy and Raven, right? Okay. Now, and by the way, all these comics I'm talking about, this guy goes out of his way to always be like, they're always over 18, and, like, the most, like, like get fucked, they're adults kind of way.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
But yeah. So there's the thing where like Raven has like 7 different versions of herself.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like 7 or 8, like
Something
or
like
like
that.
9. There's like a bunch of different versions of her that encapsulate different parts of her personality. You know, the anger, the sorrow, the you know, the actual happiness, this, that, blah blah blah, blah. And it's like they all look at Beast Boy and they all look at him with like desire, and they all like take turns fucking him, but all of them are feeling everything the other is doing, and they're all just all over him doing things, and everybody's just like, get out of the way, everybody, I'm gonna do the thing that had to be done. And she like starts taking the dick, and then like they're all like, oh, and all of them are reacting differently, but they're all feeling it. Until it's just like, oh yeah, oh, and then it's just like boom, like everybody had fun, everybody like comes really really hard.
Yeah, of course.
So it's like that sounds like fun.
That does sound like fun, actually.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to see this comic now.
I know exactly how to find it.
Okay, good. Oh, but yeah, that does actually sound like a pretty good time. So I could get.
Do we got another question?
No, that was just the one actually. But
Okay.
if you would like to ask more questions to us, you can always tweet at us with the hashtag TFTuesdayPod. Or you can leave a comment under our Twitter or YouTube videos. Or even, if you would like, you can comment on our Patreon Discord, which you can join by going to patreon.com/TFTuesdayPod.
Yeah, at any given moment, we might be reading your messages and saying some dumb shit. Well, not Zil doesn't say dumb shit. I say dumb shit, and then people ignore me. But that's fine.
I see you're fully leaning into the heel today.
I don't know. I'm like anti-hero. That's why I said like my Stone Cold Steve Austin thing is just like, I'm gonna be the best guy ever, and you're gonna love me, you're gonna hate me, but lots of people will love me. Or fuck you, I don't care, I don't need your love. It's just that kind of shit.
Gotcha.
I care.
Oh man. Well, I had a great time with this. I'm glad we got to talk about this, and I'm glad we got to share with each other our perspectives and experiences. I thought that was enjoyable. So
yeah, I mean, there could always be another part where we talk more about the kinds of sex that we had, if that's actually content people want to hear. I hope so. I think YouTube will try to bury it, but maybe we'll succeed in spite. If you people share and like the thing, you know, it'll help.
That's true. I mean, we didn't say anything spicy in the first minute, so hopefully the content filters will pass us by. But
fuck you.
Look, we will literally fuck around and find out in this case. So
yeah. Also, I would like to say that I'm looking forward to talking about like movies and shit with you, because for anybody who isn't around, which is most people, yeah, I'd like to talk about like transformation movies and everything and just go over those.
Yeah, that'll be future content.
Yeah, so if you remember the spring, we will talk about that soon.
That one's going to be a spicy one. I have lots of thoughts on that one. I know they're counter to yours in some cases, so spicy times.
That's okay, because I am undefeatable.
And with that, I guess we shall sign off. But thank you everyone for listening. As always, I hope you all stay healthy, keep an open mind, get some rest, and stay TFy. And we will see you all here again next week.
Remember, be nice to your partners, and they will be very, very lovely monsters. Good night, everybody. Good day.